Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me here. I have today, and we don't get a lot of conversations like this, so I'm really excited that we have Maria Yue here, who's a lighting artist at one of my favorite game companies, Cloud Imperium Games, who's really like just pushing so many barriers. It's really cool what they're doing. And so I'm really excited to have her here. We're going to have a little conversation about her background, how she got where she is today. And then she's got a presentation where she's going to walk us through lighting and her thoughts on it inside of the game environment. So Maria, thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, everyone, and thanks, Ren, for the invitation.
Absolutely. So tell me, before we get into your presentation, and because I really want to get in there, look like there's a lot of great stuff. How long have you been doing this?
Oh, I've working as a video game lighting artist since 2012, 13, so it's almost 5 years. It's
Okay.
more than 5 years till now, yeah.
Awesome. How'd you get into this?
Oh, well, it was completely a career switch because I initially studied fine art and then I went to a fine art institute in my hometown, China. So
Mm-hmm.
it was in Chongqing. And then after that, my subject for study is actually photography. So it's majorly for stage lighting and photography. But back then, I wasn't really sure like which sort of industry I'm going to jump in. And after I graduated from my bachelor, I went to England for study, like purely for drama and stage lighting. I just want to see how it ends. So I enrolled a courses like half for exhibition and space design, and the half is for like fine art project. You could do performance or like theaters, whichever you want. So that was in Kingston in south part of London. And I was still thinking about working as a photographer once I graduated around 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And until then, I got a friend who was using Maya, and then I was just gradually starting. Maybe I can jump into computer industry, but it sounds very difficult for me in the beginning because I thought like first I can't really modeling, or I have this like fine art experience, and I know how to light and make nice photos.
Mm-hmm.
And until I know the game, it was Assassin's Creed, I believe. Yeah, it's a Renaissance one. So then I understand, oh, there's a type of job I could use my lighting knowledge that I learned before. And because I basically want to work in games and don't want like abandon all I know and start something absolutely new. Because on one hand, I feel it's very risky. On the other hand, it's not really realistic for me as an artist. So yeah, then I start like I jump in several tutorial on YouTube and the free website. It was really buzz, I believe, back then. So 2 years self-study while working part-time as a photography. And finally, I got a job in an outsourced company in Shanghai, introduced by a friend. I guess that's how I jumped in game industry. Yeah, and later then I worked at that outsourced company basically for rendering and lighting. It's like real time and pre-rendering for about a year. And
Yeah.
after that, I just did a test for Ubisoft Shanghai. And since then, I joined Far Cry. And after that was like 2 years and 9 months in Ubisoft. And then I moved to Frankfurt in Crytek. So I worked at Crytek for Robinson, the Clamp on VR, and until now I moved to Cloud Imperium Games because I never worked on any space game before, so I feel like this is a new challenge and it's quite interesting because this project is still on early development. Yeah,
Cool.
that's how far I'm doing.
Yeah. So what do you love about a lighting? Like what drew you to that?
Okay, um, sorry, I need to switch my. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, it's coming in and out though a little bit.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I just need. Sorry, I need to switch to my phone a little bit. But for lighting, it's more or less like I was always looking for like the similar project. And because like I mentioned, I studied photography a long time ago and I just use whatever I know and try to push them further instead of learning something absolutely new.
Got it. Sounds like we might have switched microphones. Like I think your microphone went out and we're hearing more ambient sound now.
Yeah, bear with me because I think it's just like went out. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. Hello?
Yep, still here.
Yeah, I think it's a connection issue. Hello?
Yep.
Is it working now?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit louder. Can you talk again?
Maybe I need the connection first.
Maybe you can't hear me. Marie, can you hear me or no? Hello?
Yeah. Let's see if it works.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, is it working now?
Let's hear. Keep talking.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm talking.
I hear you. It's just a little low, but I think we can manage with it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Terribly sorry about that.
Not a worry, not a worry.
Okay.
So let's
Okay.
just jump into this then. Actually, we'll get right into some meat and potatoes for everybody.
Okay.
What was your favorite project to work on? That's here on your ArtStation.
Myself. So basically, I did most of those, like all I present here, like after the Robinson one, is all my personal project.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, the one I've done in latest is my favorite one. So it's actually inspired by Guillermo del Toro's Shape of the Water.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's actually a video, and would you like me to play it or just show you the screenshot below?
Just show us the screenshot because it doesn't translate on this webinar system very well.
Yeah, sure. Okay, sure. So, because as a lighting artist, I do not really modeling the asset or make it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've done usually in my personal work, this is one of friend's work, is Joe's work, which done, I think he's a lighting art, he's a 3D artist at DICE for now.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually saw this asset at Unreal Store at the market. And then what I've done, I give a new mood just to use this purely as a layout. So for most of my personal work, I just use whatever thing I feel I'm interested in. Most of them is like Victorian old architecture because I just personally like that style. So I just adopt them and combine with maybe some movie or a music, whatever I inspired. And I just carefully design the mood. It's more like we have an empty theater and set up the stage. And I usually use each project and light them with a specific style. So that's how I practice like my skill. Because I think as a lighting artist, except for like you could do very correct technology was is correct for rendering. I think in game it's more important about how you define the mood, how you combine the scenario and the environment and make them work together.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, look at that. That's great. All right, let's hear your presentation. That'd be great to jump into that.
Okay. Yep, sure. And so this is a lighting tutorial which I built up a long time ago when I worked at Ubisoft. Because the reason I'd like to share with this is because this is based on my own experience about lighting and also some of my interests, like where and what type of resource I use while start lighting. Because I know people looking for games and you probably say, okay, this game is beautiful and they look nice. But one thing I really like, I learned from a mentor, is always look further and deeper. So try to find out what is the base of the style. And also I believe because if you extract the first idea from the raw source or where like from art history, a different type of style and trend, I think the original resource will give you more idea and you will have way more space to expanding your own thoughts. It's more like you know the pattern of the shell and make them of your own. So I will just start jumping quickly. So one thing I'm really interested and always feel fascinated is the Broadway music. Because while I was studying in London, I've been like work and went to them, even went to the theater like a general audience. Because I keep watching those old theater musicals like several times, like Les Miserables, Fatima Opera, and The Wicked. And I guess that's where I learned most of my interior and stage lighting, because stage is always a stage. It's a very small space, and those great artists, they could expanding different moods, swing, and make everything alive purely based on lighting. And I feel that's very fascinating. Maybe that's why I choose my final profession as a lighting artist.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a photographer. It's also like computer game. It's just like movie, but movie we have more freedom to interact with. So in here, I just select a few of my favorite movie. Well, there's one for Beauty and the Beast. I purely admire by the lighting. And for Brave, I was working on a clump while I was watching this movie like over and over again. It just teach me the beauty of Scotland. Because even I study in UK, I never born here. I feel if we make some convincing environment, like it's very important to know how to look like, and also animations are always stylized. And I will find the idea and extract them from like whoever does a better job than I do. And early one for Pan's Liberate, of course, Guillermo del Toro, and I watched his Crimson Peak and Shape of Water in recent. That's where I got that latest project, that inspiration for my latest project. And the other one, I believe everybody loves it if you're into like stop motions. It's just Tim Burton, because I think most of the movie I like is very highly stylized. And I was extracting several pictures from the beauty of nature, because back then I was trying to use those screenshots to narrative like the key thing about how the environment light gonna tell the story. Because no matter you work on the vision or you work in just purely for pretty rendering, it needs to be way more convincing. And I think to extract any key elements from the environment you have, no matter you are lighting a level or a characters, just trying to find the right recipe to make them alive. So that's why I think study those, no matter it's concept or from film, is very important, because those artists, they have very good eye to extract all the elements to make things alive. Yeah. And I also expanding a small about for season study, and his season is a bit tricky. It really depends on where you are, or like speak of different project. Probably each art director has their own understanding about the level. Even like those are like early test sample in Far Cry, which I did. And I remember back then my art director was giving me very abstract guidance about the weather. So basically it's a sunny day, but they want either moody or like it's very safe or danger. But usually all we have is a cloudy day. So how may I use color to identify the season change, or like is it humid or dried up? It purely depends on the color. So I think the very important thing which I got from my foundation, like fine art studies, like the understanding of the color chart. It's all really back to basic. Because to be honest, in the beginning, I never find like the fine art based knowledge gonna be very useful and dedicate when I change my career and I decide to be a writing artist again. Because I always think like I have to know the latest technology about the rendering. I have to understand the shader. But in the end, I realized that the more environment I worked with and the deeper I understand, the most important thing is always like how you're gonna grasp the idea. Because sometimes it really depends on your art director. Some art directors, they're good at like describing things, and the others probably give me like very detail-based reference. But as a writer, I see the margin is always very abstract. So how the work ends, if sometimes I'm lucky, I got a concept artist work, then I can base on that. It's very easy. But if it's like, say, we are working for an open world 24-hour games, I need lots of knowledge and imagination to fulfill the environment and make it alive. Yeah, so there's just like a more wider study, because I just identify my own experience based on both interior and exterior. So this chapter is basically for the exterior. And I did a separate study for the fog and all VFX effect, because people, I don't know, because in game industry is, if I may say, it's very strange, because people identify lighting is lighting and special effect is special effect. But back to days I work as an apprentice in theaters, it's all about the light and the soft light box and smoke motion. So I usually think the light effect and all the particle effect, they should come together. That's one thing I really like for my current job, because my art director gave me lots of freedom, and the VFX, the special effect artist, they always like cooperate with me, so I could really have that freedom to make everything dancing together. That's a very rare experience which I didn't have in my previous project or company. It's nothing about like the people, it's just because how the pipeline goes, and also we do not have that fluency of time because there's always a deadline. Yes. And for this movie, well, some people say it's quite commercial, but I would say the most impressive part for me is how they expand the old story into a new way. It's still very romantic and nice, but I could say how the cinematography goes and how they understand the lighting works with all the fog and particles. Because I was quite impressed while I saw this concept art in the beginning, just because like how they identify the color tone and contrast. It's never complex, but it's very iconic, and I could tell the cold and warm, because I feel this image like this is a very good material for study, especially for how could I understand the light effect and use them in a very artistic way, and meanwhile to maintain the convincing, because not we can't really make everything like out of nowhere. We got always use something as a reference. So those, in my mind, I feel it's a very good reference because it teach me how to use cold and warm tone, and also how to balance them together. And except the movie and the concept art, I love watching stop motion. So yeah, I didn't find any good. This is just a screenshot while I was watching the box drop. So I feel this type is quite different than the stop motion I know before. It's like very bright and safe, and they use some crazy colors. Because I just feel like the way how they use the color is very brave, and for lighting is always about tell the space. So I'm just trying to show how to tell the space better. So movie and stop motion animation is like the best way for me to study, because I did a lot of research and collections about it. And oh, by the way, I'd like to show this is my pillar. This is a mood board while I was construct the work I've shown earlier, the shape of water inspired Victoria House. So I've got, you can see I took inspiration from movies, Ramon's Sneakers, Bad Luck, and Bloodbone, and some of the just random concept that I found online. I believe this one's from Assassin's Creed. And here are some screenshots from the Toro's shape of water. Because sometimes, except I look at the image or I watch in the movie, I really like doing, which I call film anatomy or something. So I took screenshot. I try to find interview with the artist, how they make the movie, just to see how people make things happen and try to mimic it. Because I believe like between camera and game editor, it's just different tool. I think as the artist or who make your own art, your understanding never change, but just look in very detail, because I didn't think further like, oh, I'm gonna recreate something like Shape of Water. I never think about that, because maybe I just look at this image and say, okay, this bouncing is great, and I love this color tone. And I always try to start with something very simple, so to achieve like this effect first, and maybe we can add more folk and how to make things interesting. Because maybe because I can't modeling, so I always start with something fairly simple. But gradually, I think the topic or the goal I have, I could push them even further. So while I was making my own stuff, I just try to make everything very simple. And I will only start with, like, this is like the shot I did for Far Cry 4. And the last chapter is actually for photography the characters. So I just summarize like everything I learned up to school or in my personal experience, like how you shape up the character here. So it's different. And based on their age, gender, or identity and scenario. So you could see I almost watch everything, and whatever very interesting, I will just try to dig them out more and see if there's anything I can learn or like anything new. Because I wouldn't say I'm really good at like draft all the informations I did, but if I do find something very interesting, I will always look further and try to find like what type of inspiration those artists have while they're creating their own work. And I genuinely feel that's a very good way to study, because that's how I feel. Like this one, I was taking some idea from Mirror's Age. That's my favorite game, because it's almost a white mesh, and those lighting artists, they make worlds alive and they speed up. So I did that experience for study, and then the second one is purely for color. Because this one is like out of nowhere, because there's one day I talked to my friend, say like, see how many colors I could put in my work, and I just try to make everything unified. It goes a bit crazy. And this one was working with my friend's Bo, so he's a really good environment artist. And when I saw it, I was say, okay, maybe I can give you a different mood, because he's a big fan of Resident Evil. And when I saw his work, I purely see those luxury, dark Victorian house. And maybe because I live in England and I saw that type of weather every day, so I just try to deliver them, transfer them. They are unreal. And later, because I haven't watched the movie Crimson Pig by De Toro while doing this, and later one of my mentors tells me, like, hey, have you watched that movie? And then I was really surprised, because De Toro chose like similar color than I did, which makes me very happy, because it's like, okay, if someone way more better than me did that, probably this choice of color is correct. And this is another continuous study. So while doing this one, I was just simply challenging myself. How may I deliver a low-key lighting? So I was imagining like what is outside, and just to use those British schooling weather I saw every day. And I did some interesting lighting like experiment. It's more like an experiment. I'm glad I got this result. But low-key lighting is very challenging for myself, and so I just try to push that boundary further. But to be honest, whenever I do my personal project, I never think about I'm gonna create something great. It's more like I want to practice a specific knowledge, and then I'm trying. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Okay.
All right, so I got a couple questions if now is a good time for me to jump in.
Yep.
So, yeah, so tell me, I mean, I guess, what are the common lighting scenarios? So you mentioned low-key lighting. Right. And so if we're talking
Yeah.
to environment
Okay. Yeah.
artists, what are the common type of
Mhm.
lighting scenarios that somebody can study?
I would say it depends for environment and or character. For character, because I would say all the lighting theory I use,
Yeah.
they are back to the fundamental.
Okay.
So I will recommend people study the 3-point lighting for character
Yeah.
and the basic environment lighting. I would say look at architecture because there's not really a way because every case in terms of lighting they're different. So like I myself, if I have to light something very modern or new, just to find something in real life because I believe everybody has a very good eye to be a lighting artist because that's our everyday experience. So always refer something in real life rather than like owning a painting or owning a concept art. I think that's a very good point to start because well for now we all use digital tool. We got time mapper, we get exposure, we have lots of control, but without knowing the fundamental or how the real world works, I think maybe they have to work even longer to figure out like if there's anything wrong. See, I saw lots of good work online, like the environment is great, but because maybe the artist or the tool they use doesn't have like a decent value of exposure, it could simply ruin everything. Sometimes I feel it's quite waste. So just look at real life and find a sign or a layout is quite similar, or just to go take a picture yourself in different angles, different time of day, and different weather.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important and fundamental way.
Okay, got it. But if we were to try to get like
Mm-hmm.
some kind of way to codify this, so there's low level
Mm-hmm.
light. What are other
Yeah.
types of light setups that people could kind of study? And low level light means, there's just going to be a lot of
Mm-hmm.
shadow, so you're dealing with kind of you got to figure out how to light the shadow
Yeah,
without
it's true.
revealing, what's in there too
Mm-hmm.
much. So there's low level, there's low key light. What other kind of light scenarios are good for for us to practice?
Mm, I think the first light, I don't know if I describe in English is correct, but we call it shape up light. So basically, you can start with a omni light and a spotlight, and just forgot global illumination, forgot like any type of backlight bouncing and all the rendering tool to boost the beauty level.
Hmm.
Think about you shape up the light, shape up your object or your scenario with a spotlight, and that guy gonna be the spotlight will be the main guy who lights up your shape, no matter it's a wagon or it's a chair. Just play with that one light and find the ideal angle.
Okay.
The way how we judging the ideal angle is simple. It's like whoever which angle tells the volume the best, and meanwhile it casts a beautiful shadow. And after say we try to set up the spotlight first, imagine you're in a studio alone, you get a spotlight, and that's it. So after we shape up the object or your thing, then use one spotlight. The reason is because the spotlight will give you like fairly nice shape up, but maybe the shadow gonna get pitch black, or you get except where the light lights up, the background is pitch black. And then I feel it's time to play with the omni light. You can make it larger or smaller, softer or harder, depends on the radius. Just to play with them, because once you get the shape up and you think about the omni light like your reflection board or something to add up and balance the contrast in the
Hmm.
thing, just start with something simple. And after that, maybe we will have better idea like, oh, I need to add one more spotlight to make the shadow or the thing to layer them up. So always judging the picture, like forgot when I myself lighting, I will make like almost to force myself forgot the material first, forgot the vertex color or any texture first, just judging the shape, the form, the balance of contrast. Just pretend I can't really read the color. And after I shape them up with my key light, the spotlight, and my first fill light, omni one, could be one or two. And then I start to think about, oh, shall I place the main object in a warm tone or a cold tone? And of course, in regards to the color chart, if I key my object in a cold tone, I will save the warm tone for my background. So I think it's easier to layer them up. It's just like painting. You get the base color, you get the base shape, and after that, we can probably divide one spotlight into two, just to make them more convincing, more accurate. It's layer by layer. That's how I do my light work.
Okay, cool. Can we go back to your presentation real quick? I got a few questions I want to pull from the imagery there.
Yeah, sure.
So I'd love to talk
Just
about.
let me know.
Yeah, we'll just start here. So let's. There's the troll scene with the guy from Box Trolls.
Yep. There is like a screenshot of this guy, right?
Yeah, 19.
Is
Yeah.
that this one?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So if we're talking like it's how do I say this? So in CG, of course, we have the problem that everything is crystal clear lighting, everything is white, and you have to put so much of the real world into it. So what are some of the elements or like the anatomy of lighting? I think of it like from a painter, because I come from the painter perspective. I always think of light in terms of form. So there's value and how it shows form off. Then there's lighting in terms of color and or there's hue saturation. Hue variation really is kind of the key. So warm, cool, things like that. But that stuff's always very confusing. Warm in the shadows, cool in the light. Can you talk to me for a bit about what are the essential elements of lighting? Maybe the 3 or 4 essential elements.
So you mean like, see, if I do an anatomy about this screenshot, right?
Yeah, like or you talked about how you set it up. So now, once you get this, how do you know you're doing it right? What are 3 or 4 really important things that you're always checking?
Yeah, I do. So like the first thing I will check is like, of course, no matter we work on game or film or painting, there's always a topic. So first I see, no matter which type of weather I select, it's warm or cold. Basically, we just use the term to define the season, the weather, or the time of day. So if that part is gone, that will identify the primary color chart and also the percentage of my cold and warm tone in this imaging.
Okay.
And after that, then but this is more like before I start set up the light. While I really work on the light, I will see the brightness between my primary light for the character or the scene, or my secondary light for the bouncing or the environment. So that's almost the key element to define the contrast or sometimes the sharpness or softness of the image. So it really depends on what I want. If I'm lighting like a street in a raining scene, I would definitely choose some really sharp key light and probably give him some softer fog to tell the environment. But if it's a surgery room and there's something serious going on, I'll probably light them like the key light and the background are going to be very balanced. And in return, I will push the specular in some detail, like probably will have some surgery bed or like any kind of operate table and got something metal. Yeah, if this is a really bright thing, I will always try to play with the shader and the material, because either way, no matter it's a very bright image or a darkening image, we need contrast, and based on the contrast, we need detail at each tone. So that's how I think.
Okay, so
and I will think the fog particle as a, yep.
Yeah, let me see if I can summarize. So first thing you do is you define the temperature. Or the temperature defines really the time of day and the weather, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then the next thing that comes in is the factors. What's the color of the bounce light? And that starts to determine like that's what sets up the contrast. And so the factor there is what's happening in the scene. And so if it's a I think you said if it's a rainy day or something like that, then you might put like a really sharp light on there because the rain's making things diffuse, and so you'll put a sharp light in there to make things a little bit harder, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. And then if it was a surgery kind of scene, you'll keep things kind of balanced, but you'll increase the specularity to really, provide that amount of emphasis, so to speak, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's more like I'm probably not really gonna bouncing or boost the specularity like a specific parameter. In return, I'll ask my environment artist to place something metal or something like water highly reflective there. So it's more like you design the scene based on like the design of light.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, it's basically I will try to influence the scene. Yeah.
Okay, so temperature, and then the bounce light, and then what's another element that you look for to really help sell a scene?
Yeah, so after, because we always have to go and look after the background and the key light. So that happens in both real photography and in game. So light ratio. So long story short, the light ratio is about how much like percentage or your multiple different times between your background omni light and the key light. Say if I have a key light with intensity like 10, I'll probably use like my intensity for background like now 2, because then the light ratio gonna be 1/5, if that makes sense. So it's like the brightness of the key light is really bright, and then we got intensity 10 for the key, and then we got intensity 2 for the omni light as a fill. So that's how I define the contrast.
Okay. Got it. Run those numbers by me one more time. The key light is at a 10, bounce light or the omni light, the fill light is going to be at a 2.
Yeah, and then we could see, because that's how like 1/5 or 1/4 light ratio is like the basic sample I start with. Judging by the scene, I will either like expanding them or narrow it, so make the brightness is more closer between the omni light and the key light, or makes them like even way more contrast. So I darken the omni light further.
Okay,
Just depends on like what type of
Okay, and in this scene that we're looking at, the omni light would basically be defining blue.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, and the key light would be the one that is be that light coming in from the open door. It'd be the orange temperature light, right?
Yeah, that would be like the yellow. In this scene, I'd say the yellow is a key light because it fills up the character. But the reason I choose this screenshot is because it's a very smart way, because they use the background bluish light flood in through the scene. While it lights the scene, it also gives a rim light effect to the character. So while the artist doing this, I think they just use the close-up key light, which is orange. They go in through the face of the character. It tells the surprise or shocking expression to the boy. And meanwhile, they use the background flat blue light to give that ring light effect. That's how they light his hair, his face, and the shape of his body. Because animation is all about movement, I would say this blue light is a secondary key light while it lights up the environment. So the result is not very noisy, but if the boy is moving, we could imagine that rim light just gives him a highlight outline and to emphasize the movement further. So the reason I choose this, that's why I feel this lighting design is a very smart way, because they use only 2 light to simple the same, but it also emphasizes the movement and details.
Okay, got it. Now, if we were to take, do you have an example of like more of a sci-fi kind of setup? I think you have something in your art station over here.
Yep, I think I only have that on my art station. But yeah, because I can use, let's see, this one is I did for Robinson. So this is like the project I did. So this is the Robinson journey, one of the shot from the port. But sadly, I can't upload anything from Static yet.
Okay, so in this case, in these scenes, You know, one of the issues, one of the things sci-fi has is like a predominance of blue, right? But how do you set, in fact, actually, can you go to your front, to your, there was a different image I wanted to look at. Can you go to your main ArtStation page?
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, sure.
And let me see. Oh, it's the one, let me get you the exact title. It's called Sunrise and Sci-Fi Hallway.
Ah, this one. Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay. So
There's a lot going on in this.
it is. There's a lot going on.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I was uninitiated, I didn't understand. I'm looking at this. I see pink. I see green. I see orange. I see blue. I see, looks like sunlight. So it's like warm light coming in. And then, you know, there's a ton of reflections. How do you manage something like this? You know, if we're looking at your process, let's start with that first thing you said. The first thing you do is you look for the temperature, which tells you the time of day and all of that. So what's the temperature here?
Oh, here, because I set up the Skybox like early morning.
Okay.
So it's supposed to be like it's sunny. Because when I work on this thing, I said first I changed the layout a bit because it's from the Unreal preset. And I opened two windows. And the reason I opened two windows here is because I'd like to introduce the sunlight which flood in, and because everything is metal, I just use the entire thing as a bouncing surface.
Okay.
So then I could get sufficient amount of like a warm tone. And in return about the bluish, initially I didn't like manage to get that purple, but I feel the original color of the chair, I didn't change that much, it just makes them quite bluish. And then think this should go green if I push the blue further, because that's how the primary color works. And so I just told myself I don't really want that, because green doesn't really fit this thing for me. So in return, I just changed those omni light and also the surface. I changed the diffuse color a bit, and I think while I was like this, the key light was purely orange. And instead of using vertex color, I just use the color temperature, because it will give all the texture surface more freedom, so they won't really get washed out. Sometimes I use vertex color, but I will never use the vertex color instead of color temperature in my key light. That's because that's when you light a thing and you get the color broken. Because if it's vertex and we have really crazy saturate, the entire texture color, the diffuse gonna get washed out. And that's how, if we light this thing with purely orange vertex, I'll probably got all the bouncing ends up with orange, and the entire thing kind of looks really flat. Of course, I don't want that. And how I redo with the skylight is, instead of using a blue skylight, I just use the Skybox. It's a HDR imaging, and I just project that HDR imaging as my secondary bouncing light. Because I really like working with HDR secondary bounce instead of like just pure blue light from sky, because as a secondary bouncing light, the skylight just give me more freedom and more detail, because it's an image. It just get projected, and all we need is set up the local cube map to make sure the bouncing is correct. And then once I have a very correct back base between my skylight and the sunlight, I can just develop further with those artificial light source. So my working process is like, first is a key light or the orange part. So I tweaked all the angle to make sure like it creates a lighting pool on the ground. And also I could get like more like bouncing for the roof and the wall. So that's my warm room. In return, I have like the skylight. This is a skybox reflection, if you could see. So the major color is like a very light blue, and part of the skybox is a bit indigo. That's how I got the blue tone fix in. And after that, based on that, I just got the like those ring light. I actually make the lighting really blue, so while I bake it, I could get those bluish bounce in this specific part.
Okay, let's
because of the brightness. Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack that. I think it seems really, there's just so much depth to that. So like if we look right at this image where you've got the lighting path in it, and we're looking at the middle, the middle image, the image in the middle of all of this. So I see warm and I see cool. And what I understood is you set a skybox on the outside for early morning. So that's going to come in with that kind of orangish, yellowish light. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, and that's coming in through the windows. And then how are you getting this kind of cooler, bluer light that's inside and lighting up that kind of center panel? Because I think you said your Omni light is a bit more orange, or was I wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, the Omni light is a bit blue, actually.
Is the what, sorry?
Sorry, so the key light is the sun, like those area,
Yeah.
if you could see my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where the genuine sunlight comes in. So it creates up a lighting pool here, and that's how I got the bouncing around. But in return, like I said, because I use a very bluish skybox,
yeah,
and I just make the skylight as my secondary Omni light. So that's how I got those blue which they flood in through the window. But from here, I got this is basically because I used the environment probe, and that probe also attached a skybox texture. So it's more like I use a cube map with a skylight HDR imaging tagged on, so I could get those interior reflections. It's still from the skylight, it's the same pattern, but there is a like environment probe, so it's a capture environment sphere in Unreal, and I can actually show you here. So
we're in Unreal.
Yeah.
Oh my
so
God! This is your scene. This is the other one. I didn't even realize we got this treat.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No, it's okay. So I can show you. So it's much easier because sorry about my English. And this is how it works. If you could see here.
Yep. Cube brush. You're under the reflection capture, and you're within their cube brush setting.
Yeah, it is. So I just use the cube brush,
cube
and
map, sorry.
this is the skybox. Yeah, this is the skybox picture image I use for this thing. But for the sci-fi thing, is exactly the same story. So how I got saying you were asking about those cooler secondary bouncing.
Yeah.
It's actually grounded by a sphere capture, which get a cube map attached. And this cube map, I just make sure the angle and the texture unifies, so exactly like the skybox outside.
Okay, got it. So this is, let me make sure I understand it. So this is a sphere reflection skybox. Okay. And this is basically affecting the reflection color primarily, right? In the simple sense.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you've got your light coming in, and then you're mapping a cool color to the reflection side of it, so that when the light comes in, it then reflects a cool
that's true.
Light. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right. So now, when somebody, and correct me if I'm wrong, but lighting, it's easy for somebody, I think, to look at lighting and be like, oh, you put some lights in and you kind of, that's cool. But there are a million little tiny tricks, right? Like that cube brush, that sounds to me like not very intuitive of a trick. And it's something that's you learn how to do that. Am I right in saying that or not?
It's more like, I think I just try to expanding, I don't know, because the cube, I wouldn't call it like a trick, because it's more like if you think about you taking a photograph and I'm missing the secondary bouncing line. How may I get the secondary bouncing line? Of course, I need a whiteboard to get more reflecting. And I just thinking that way, and then I realized in Unreal I have so many tools to introduce the light. Because I saw the other artists' tutorial, they attached like HDR texture on the skybox. So I was just, it's more like I'm half trying and half thinking in theory it should work, but just to try it, and then it works well for me, and then I start to use it. So
great.
I wouldn't think like learning specific trick is important, but I guess that's how my photography fundamental benefits me.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was getting to is it's not real world. You're not getting the benefit of an infinite amount of bounce. And
No.
so you have to manufacture this, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So part of your job is using the right kind of tools inside of Unreal to manufacture, that quality, I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Okay. So along those lines, what are some of the kind of simple, maybe the essential tools that if an environment artist is starting out and they just want their work to look good, because an environment artist, they make all the stuff, but then they're looking at it and they're like, well, it looks kind of boring, not very exciting. And then they throw on a Skybox, or they throw on some simple HDRI imagery, and they're just not getting the look of it. What are a few simple tools that they can use, to get there?
Well, I studied 3D art from Maya, so back then I never touched any engine. What I use is just the Maya viewport, and now Maya viewport is like way more advanced. If they purely making like their own art based on 3D Max or Maya, I think the rendering tool still works. But for quick result, I'd say, because I use Unreal as like my personal work project just because it has so many resources and it has lots of freedom and it's very friendly to artists. So I'd encourage people use Unreal. Like even you don't really have to touch those complex lighting set. There's some like ready set levels. Maybe just to start with that, because that's how I studied Unreal in the beginning. Because I don't know anything about lighting in the beginning, and I just try to study those preset level, and gradually I familiar with tool like one by one, and then I think my fundamental knowledge about photography only works when I have known the tool really well. So for environment artists, I'd say find a scene and with like really good preset of environment and just drag your game machine and see how it works. That's one way. And if they really would like to practice lighting, I think any 3D tool with viewport is good. Or like some of the quick renderings, they have like really quick render preset for artists like Maxwell, I think. And I didn't use that myself, but I saw people use it. Like most of them, they're architecture or interior designers, and they feel that that one is a good start. But for me, I think Unreal still the most friendly one because they have lots of free resource on different aspects. Yeah, and we have also there's always an online guidance, so all of those documents could guide people. That's how I know because I didn't, to be honest, I didn't work at any Unreal project at work because all the project that I've involved is either developer engine or CryEngine based, or now it's like Lumberyard. So I would say I just feel like I use Unreal for study the tool, knowing the tool, and also it gives me lots of freedom. So that's why I always choose it.
Okay, got it. So, do you mind? And I'm going to open up questions here in just a second, guys. I know you've been shouting things out, but I really wanted to kind of deep dive into this, and Maria's really gone deep in this, and I don't think we've even remotely scratched the surface of her knowledge. But Maria, if you can, I'd love you to, in that Unreal, take us into your Unreal scene, and when I look at this, I'll be honest, it's incredibly intimidating because there was how many lights were there set up there? There was probably 15 lights.
Yeah, actually, I think I didn't because some of the lights they're only for the fog, so it's not really for lighting. Like this is one of my key lights, and the major thing was cast by this sunlight. Yeah, this is my dynamic sunlight, and you see most of the light because I use some of the dynamic caustic light for the scene, but the reason how I design my light, if I select everything, I just try to make them fairly small and simple.
I'm losing your audio a little bit, Maria.
Oh, hello? Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It
So
might
some
be.
of the lights,
Yeah, it might be that your computer
okay.
started going faster.
Oh, okay. Ah,
So I hear a fan.
okay. Yeah, I think it's because of Unreal. Yeah,
Yeah.
my laptop started getting very noisy.
All right, that's fine. So maybe we don't get to walk through this too much, but what I would love to understand how you go about the process of setting this up and breaking something like this down to, to even start. Because I mean, I look at this thing. This is unbelievably beautiful. What you have here, you have color, you have temperature, you have contrast, you have reflection, you have fog, caustics. You've got warm and cool. You've got different shades of green going to blue. You've got oranges going and yellows going to reds. So there's an enormous amount of variety in really awesome things going on. So how do you start a scene like this? That's the first question.
Okay, so like I said in the beginning, I always start with a notebook. So if we check this line here, you can see it. So I just try to start with something really simple again. So some, if you give me a minute, I'll try to find some screenshot while I was work in progress. I believe I have it.
I'm losing your audio, Maria. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it looks like it's still grabbing your like your computer audio, your computer microphone.
Oh, really?
Not your headset.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try it again. Is it working now?
Keep talking.
Hello?
Yeah, keep talking. I can.
Okay. See if it works.
It sounds better. I don't know if it's because Unreal stopped, but it does sound better. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's because of Unreal.
Okay. All right, that's fine. We can break this down theoretically. We don't need to jump into Unreal. But walk me through your thinking process again. So the first thing you do is you start with imagery and reference, and you're establishing color or temperature. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So like this part is from the original movie, and that's how I draft up my color template.
Okay.
So I just tell myself, blocks in, like stay with this blue, stay with this yellow, and just don't go too way more like bright or oversaturate. So I just keep this in my mind. And then I start with the key light study, and I get a few screenshots. Is from the BBC Sherlock Holmes, because that's exactly the age and the light source I was looking for. So it should be quite dimmer with some fog, and those images just give me the idea like how am I gonna design my key light or where it comes from.
Okay.
So the specific reason I took this is because like I've tried to find the ideal angle with similar room set with the interior, like the right angle to shape up like the chairs and make everything working. And meanwhile, this side, which the light come from, like the opposite side of the key light, is not pitch black. So this is the basic idea I start with. And those images I just purely use like I need this effect of the light shift. Then obviously I need to set up the fog volume with ideal density. So that's basic idea about color, contrast, and incidence angle of the key light, and general room contrast, and the details like fog particles. So I start with that.
Okay, so temperature. Then what was the second one? Sorry.
It's temperature here, and then it's the incident key light angle.
Key light angle,
and
got it.
Light ratio.
Okay, light ratio.
So like
great.
the brightness and darkness. Yeah, light ratio. And then this is the detail.
And then the detail. Great. Oh yeah, that's fantastic. So ratio is next, and then detail.
Yeah, so first decide the color one.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. What do you get in detail? Like, what are you looking for in the detail section?
Okay, so detail is because I was working in the interior, so the only detail I'm going to use, except the water caustics, is the fog. Okay. So the reason I collect those imaging is like it's very specific case, see how those fog and particle going to behave. Like the edge of the window,
Mm-hmm.
or like how the gradient's gonna change between like the dusty area and non-dusty area, because I have some areas wet. So
Okay.
I just try to get correctly like a reference. And for this one, it's purely for gradients, because in this thing, the key light comes from top, which is similar like what I have in my window. So I just try to grasp to the idea how the gradients of the fog gonna change.
Mm.
It's all about like the brightness, mid-tone, darkness. So I just study that and try to deliver a similar effect.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah.
and then
this is
okay, got it. And along these lines, like, what are the things that people commonly mix up? Because I look at this and I'm like, there's so much color variation, there's so much value variation. I mean, you could vary this a little bit, and suddenly you have a Thomas Kincaid painting, right? Like it becomes too obvious. So what are some of the other mistakes that people tend to make as they try to set up this dynamic lighting?
I think first place which will make confuse the artist is the saturate, is like the temperature of the color. Because
Okay.
when I myself lighting, it's very easy for me to say, oh, the bright warm is nice. Because if you look closely about those images, I'd see instead of looking detail, look something similar. See all the cold tone, they are blue, and all the warm tone, they are yellow.
Yeah.
But judging by the color saturate, because this is like bright blue and very desaturated yellow.
Yeah.
And in return, this is like the blue is almost white tone, but the yellow is very saturate. So it's always, for me, it's like balance. If I use a very like saturated cold tone, the warm tone gonna be desaturated. That's how we balance the picture. Because I think that idea comes from when I study photography again. If you take a picture on film, they will only read either warm or cold, because the traditional photography can't present everything. But in return, it looks more convincing. So that's how I would study about the saturate. And the second thing I think people will confuse is about the contrast. Because well, judging by any picture, if we have a bright point in the center and we have a darkness in the surrounding, it will make this picture very, let's say, grasp attention really well. But in return, I feel I'm gonna risk losing the detail at the highlight zone or the low key light or the dark room. So that's why I always refer to real-time photography to remind myself I need to keep a certain amount of detail at each room, because that's how the real world works. Unless we have like extreme scenario like this, we got like a huge bounce light, really bright, and create a light pool. So yeah, most of the image I use just try to regulate myself while lighting, so I won't go crazy just because I look at the detail only instead of the big picture.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so I think out of this, the central themes I've got is temperature, your key light, which also has an element of bounce, the ratio to get that right, and then to make sure you're looking at the details. Now, once you've got all of that, how do you start setting that up inside of Unreal? And we don't need to open Unreal, just like what are some generic steps for doing that?
Okay, sure, yeah. I guess my computer gonna really slow down if I open it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so after that, in Unreal it's fairly simple because I watched some tutorial. Again, I will recommend a tutorial. It's called Unreal Lighting Academy, done by Kilman Meadow. He's a lighting artist at DICE. And because just to start simple, if I light the interior thing, I will just start with the incident angle. I'm going to use this one as an example because it's quite obvious. So in this thing, I need a key light to shape up everything well. So I just choose this angle because the reason I choose it, it hits the ground. It tells me the volume of the box. It gives a nice line, like leaking light draws out the way. So the floor will not be purely flat. And after that, I set up this bluish light bounce from the Skybox. But again, this blue light is not only like granted from the skylight directly. I use a light prop to attach it, or if this way is not working, I will recommend just set up a really low secondary omni light, make them blue. So you will get a very sharp incident light, and then you get those soft bouncing line to light up the secondary detail. And
Okay.
also it will help you to tactile the material. And after that, think about the soft and soft light, because if the window shape is quite sharp because of the contrast, and imagine if I light this chandelier really sharp, I'll probably have a very noisy image, which I do not want at all. So what I've done here, I just use the only light without any lighting power, but cast the fog. So I could light up, give them some like illuminance about the foam, but won't make it like the reflection gonna go crazy because there's no light heat on this chandelier at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I can guarantee I have some brightness around this area, but it's not really have lots of like a bling bling pattern, just makes them very soft. So that's how I judge it. So I will see the key light, where the key light covered should be sharp, and this is where the main object can place. And we can create like rim light effect or like direct reflection in this area. But except this area, I will consider the rest of my scene is a secondary light. So they should be really soft. If, say, I have a sharp light, like spotlight hitting those objects, makes them nice and shaped up. In return, on the left, this area, I only use omni light because it gives me like this illuminant power, but it also gives me like a very soft touch on my scene. So nothing will go crazy noisy, because otherwise I will feel here is sharpened, here is sharpened, and that's how I get a very noisy image, and it's not good to emphasize the key or like any type of object you want to emphasize. It just basically gives you the dips by lighting, if I may say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Yeah, and after that is for the fog.
Yeah, after that is for the fog.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we are definitely taking up a bit of your time. So I think if you're ready, I guess I'm going to open this up for questions. And I know fog is one of the things that's always a beast for us. Let's open this up, guys, and get your questions out there. Let me just pull these out so I can kind of see them a little better. 1 second.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to start up at the top. Josh, just send a link. If you don't mind, that'd be great. Corinne, what resources have you used to break down stage lighting? And I think you actually just mentioned one of those resources, which was the Unreal 4 Lighting Academy.
Yep.
Okay. Corinne was also asking, how do you break down winter lighting since the shadows are blue?
I'm not quite understand this question. Would you mind to explain a bit for me?
Yeah, she was asking. So we've looked at quite a bit of scenarios, but how do you set up winter lighting scenarios?
You mean this one I'm currently showing on the screen? Or?
Well, let's do this. Corinne, give me a scene or a scenario or an image, one of her images that you want, and then I'll ask her to break that down. And then while we're waiting for you, Corinne, I'm going to pull over to Edison. Edison's question: does the lighting that artists make in Unreal 4 scene is the only light that is being used in the game, or there's added enhancement that technical artists add to it? Does that question make sense to you?
Yep. So I guess the question is about the post-process or like post-production, but I would say in most people, at least those projects I've worked on, in-game lighting is purely handled by the engine, because as a lighting artist, the very important responsibilities. On one hand, we have to maintain the quality of art, but on the other hand, we have to maintain the performance. So that's why I say always keep the light simple and neat in the beginning, because we have to keep an eye on the budget, the frame rate, because in-game environment is not only the light gonna take the performance, there's material, animation, particles, and all the gameplay missions. So we have to consider about the others as well. And also I think a value to work as a game artist, a very important value is the ability to maintain the art quality while you could respect the role of performance.
Got it. So mostly the lighting artist handles things. People don't handle it or change it after that, right?
No. Yeah, sometimes we have to cut our own light because it's over budget.
Got it. Yeah, but you guys handle that. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. There was some camera setting discussions. Got it. Ubaid asks, the pipeline differs from studio to studio, but while I was working on a project, hold on. Yeah, artists did work together before. Nope. That's just they're talking back and forth. Edison's got another question for a portfolio with an exterior render. What is the best time of day to set your lighting for so that the colors really pop?
Okay, I'd say just like you imagine you're shooting a landscape photograph, use a magic hour, because if it's a starter, use the magic hour is really good, because that's a very good hour to give you balance between cold and warm time, and also you could find lots of reference about it.
Yep.
So it's gonna make your job easier.
All right, so the magic hour, guys, and that's when the sun is close to the horizon, so it changes the way that the light rays filter through the atmosphere, and it's beautiful. It's like Hudson River School type paintings.
Yeah.
But you Google it, you'll see. As soon as you Google magic hour, you'll see the warm and the enriching light that comes from it. Maria, thank you so much. We are in debt for your knowledge and your kindness here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron, again for the invitation, and hopefully didn't bother you much with my English.
No, pure pleasure. All right, guys, thank you much for being here. Maria, again, thank you so much. Have an awesome night. I imagine it's getting quite late there. And
yeah, it's all right.
And then the rest of you guys, I'll see you in class. All right, take care.
Okay, take care, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.